The last time Bisi saw her father, he handed her a loaf of bread and said, "This is all I can give you now." She was only 7, too young to understand the weight behind those words, but old enough to see the tears shining in his eyes. Bisi clutched the bread tightly as her father walked away, his shoulders hunched under the fading light of dusk. She didn't cry. She thought he'd be back soon. He always came back, even after the longest days at the construction site. But that night, he didn't. Her mother tried to shield her from the truth. "Papa's gone to find work in the big city," she said, her voice shaky but firm. "He'll send for us soon." Bisi nodded, even though deep down, she wasn't sure she believed it. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and still no word came from him. Life without Papa was hard. Her mother worked as a cleaner, scrubbing floors and washing clothes for wealthier families in their town. Some days, they ate only boiled cassava, and other days, they went to bed hungry. Bisi watched her mother grow thinner and quieter, but she never complained. Instead, she smiled and said, "One day, things will get better." As the years passed, Bisi learned to stop asking about her father. Each time she did, her mother's face would tighten, and she changed the subject. But at night, Bisi would clutch her pillow and wonder, did Papa forget about them? Was he even alive? By the time Bisi turned 18, she had accepted that her father wasn't coming back. She had grown into a determined young woman, studying hard at school and helping her mother with her cleaning jobs. Her dream was to become a teacher, to create a better life for herself and her mother. One rainy evening, while tidying up an old trunk in their small room, Bisi found a stack of yellowed envelopes tied with string. Her curiosity piqued. She opened one. Inside was a letter in her father's handwriting. "My dearest Bisi and Mofon, I hope this letter finds you well. I think of you every day, and it breaks my heart to be so far away. I left because I had no choice. The debt collectors were threatening to harm you both, and I couldn't let that happen. I came to the city to work and send money back, but things have been harder than I imagined. Please forgive me for leaving. With all my love, Papa." Tears blurred Bisi's vision as she clutched the letter. She frantically opened more envelopes, reading each one. There were dozens of letters, all written over the years, detailing her father's struggles. He had taken on back-breaking jobs, digging ditches, carrying cement blocks, and working as a night guard, trying to send money home. But his wages were meager. And after paying off the loan sharks who had threatened their family, he had barely enough left for himself. The last letter was dated 5 years ago. It read, "I don't know if this letter will ever reach you. I've been ill, and the doctor says I need rest, but I can't afford to stop working. Busy, if you're reading this, know that I love you and your mother more than anything in this world. I left to protect you, even though it cost me everything. I pray you'll forgive me one day." Bisi sat on the floor, clutching the letters to her chest, her heart heavy with grief and regret. Her father hadn't abandoned them. He had sacrificed himself for their safety. That night, Bisi couldn't sleep. She stayed awake, replaying memories of her father in her mind. The way he used to lift her onto his shoulders, how he'd whistle while fixing broken chairs, and the warmth of his embrace. The next morning, Bisi made a decision. She would find her father. Her search began with the return address on one of the letters. It led her to a crumbling tenement building in the outskirts of the city. The landlord, an old man with tired eyes, remembered her father. "He lived here for a few years," the man said. Worked hard, but he was always sick. Haven't seen him in a long time. Bisi's hope wavered, but she pressed on, visiting nearby shops and asking anyone who might have known him. Finally, at a roadside stall, an elderly woman selling roasted plantains recognized the name. Ah, Obong, the woman said, nodding. He used to sit here every evening, talking about his wife and daughter. He was a good man, but life was unkind to him. He passed away a few years ago. Bisi's knees buckled, and she sank onto the ground, tears streaming down her face. The woman patted her shoulder gently. He loved you, she said. He always said he was proud of his little girl. He wanted you to have a better life. Through her tears, Bisi managed to ask where he was buried. The woman directed her to a small cemetery on the outskirts of the city. Bisi visited the grave that evening, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers she had picked along the way. The headstone was simple, with her father's name etched into the weathered stone. She knelt beside it, her heart aching with both sorrow and gratitude. Of its Papa, she whispered, placing the flowers on the grave. I'm sorry I didn't understand. Thank you for everything you did for us. I promise I'll make you proud. From that day forward, Bisi carried her father's memory with her as a source of strength. She worked harder than ever, eventually earning a scholarship to university. She became a teacher, just as she had dreamed, and dedicated her success to her father's sacrifice. Years later, as Bisi stood in her own classroom, watching her students laugh and learn, she thought of her father's final words in his last letter. I pray you'll forgive me one day. I forgive you, Papa, she whispered, a smile breaking through her tears. And I'll always love you